Hello, everyone. Welcome to Rash's World. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Doc Howard. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I feel truly honored compared to all the other great intellects you've had on.
Wonderful. So, the toughest question first. How would you briefly describe yourself to our audience here? What would you say?
That's a really good question. I'm a 72-year-old grandfather, been a veterinarian for over 40 years. I've been a surfer for about 40 years, been doing yoga for about 50 years, and truly happy to be here. This is the first book I've ever written. It took me 7 years to write, and I hope it'll do some good in the world.
Awesome. So let's get started with the book. It's called "Healing Both Ends of the Leash." A fascinating title. And so, what is it about?
Originally, it was about the magic I saw when pets were put on real food as opposed to kibble. We were taught in vet school, feed them scientifically formulated food. I was the only one in my class who was going to be a wildlife vet, so I didn't pay any attention to that because wildlife eat wild foods. But there were no jobs when I finished, except for working for a wildlife dermatologist. Most of what he saw was dogs and cats, so I got introduced to that and was really astounded how unhealthy so many of these pets were. They're well cared for. The food was the best money could buy, and they were looking sad, to say the least. Chronically ill, arthritis, bad skin. And I saw a dog at a winery up in Northern California that looked fantastic. And when I asked or complimented the wine for her, she said that the stupid vets have their way. This dog would be dead. So everybody pointed their finger at me as a stupid vet. And to make a really long story short, she had seen a chiropractor rather than having her dog euthanized. And the chiropractor for humans told her feed him real food and get him off that horrible food vets feed. I actually called her up and she said that food we feed is making them sick, and then the drugs we give them is making them sicker. That's insane. So I apologized, and something clicked because again, all the wild animals I'd seen looked really good. So I had 5 dogs scheduled to get new hips put in because they had such severe arthritis. And I called them up, said, you mind trying this wine dog diet, which is just out of their own refrigerator? And in 30 days, all of these dogs, which I had, in all honesty, recommended to have new hip replacement surgery, were running and jumping. Some stopped seizuring, some their skin got better, and I couldn't believe it. So I dove headlong into what's called holistic medicine. And clients would always say, you got to write this down. Nobody's doing it. This is back in 88. This is a long
Wow.
time
Okay. Yeah.
ago.
Yeah. Long time
Yeah,
ago. Yeah.
real long time ago. Now everybody knows about it. But back then I was like the only guy who was recommending real food. And I couldn't believe how these patients just healed. And then later on, the family said, but this worked for us. And at that time, I was falling apart. I'd herniated a disc in my back, I had autoimmune disease, every joint in my body hurt. So I was going deep into the what would cure me. And I finally thought, if I was a dog named Doug, what would I do? So I started kind of eating just that simple diet, eliminating a lot of foods based on the plant paradox books Dr. Gundry wrote. And I couldn't believe it. All my joints stopped hurting with one exception. And I was pretty much crippled. I couldn't even lift a file, couldn't go upstairs. And within a week, just eliminating certain foods, I was a new man. I had one bad hip that got replaced last summer, but that was osteoarthritis rather than autoimmune. And so I decided, I'm going to write about the wonders of this natural diet for dogs. And I'm going to put some people in it too, just in case there's somebody like me struggling to try to find how to treat autoimmune disease. There's really no autoimmune doctors. I searched so far before I finally got some help. So that's kind of the long story why I wrote it.
There are two things I find fascinating. One of them that there's junk food when it comes to pet food as well. Like something that we have to watch out for. They have their own sort of junk food too, because it's not, again, we want to look for real food for them too. And then that it goes both ways, like you say in your title. both ends of the leash. So it's also like in a way there's that symbiosis, the connection that we have with the animals. And I remember watching like the Dog Whisperer with Cesar Milan, and he really works more with the owners than with the dogs because a lot of the issues are actually the owners who are bringing it to the dogs, and they kind of absorb it. So I find that kind of connection very, very interesting.
Yeah, we definitely are working with both ends of the leash. We have to, really take care of the families. And the amazing thing is every family has always been happy to feed real food. I've never had anyone say, no, I don't have time. But when, they'd ask, would this work for them? I go, yeah, I've done 4 years of research. They go, well, I'm not giving up pizza or beer or candy. So I dwelled into the human, this is a world you know much better than me, into the world of human addiction. Why are people addicted to foods that harm them? And,
Mhm.
came up with a short answer for that at the end of the book. But pets make us better, and we make pets better too. So it's definitely a symbiotic relationship that like you
Absolutely.
described.
Yes, yes. And I also had someone on my podcast, Wendy Sunshine, who talked about parenting and as well as dogs, and that there is again many similar things between how we parent the dogs and how we parent children, and that we can learn from either one that can add to our expertise of parenting, which is again a very hard thing to do, or we don't get a manual for. And the other thing that makes it complicated, like with pets, children, they come in their own format. So it's not one size fits all. You have to adjust, and something that works for
Absolutely.
child A doesn't work for child B at all.
Same with animals. There's some dogs. I used to work in Queensland with these Queensland healers, blue healers. Now there's a cartoon character named Bluey, but the real dogs are really difficult to train. The Aussies say they train them with a two by four. They're so stubborn, but they can herd these incredibly fierce, bloodthirsty Brahma bulls. They just love to work herding them. They're so highly trained. But when people tell me they're getting one, as a puppy, I say they better devote about 3 hours a day because they need to run about 20 miles a day, and you need to get a trainer or they will tear your house to pieces. Other dogs are so easy to train. Labradors, Goldens, they just want to be good. They're wonderful.
Mhm. But it comes down to really a compassionate form of care, like and treating the patient, whether it's a dog or a human being, as an individual. And I don't see it in either way. Often it's ignored, or people just try to jump over it, or they find a quicker way. It's like, okay, well, this is what worked for this many people, therefore it should work for you as well. But really, that attention to the individual is so important, whether we're talking about animals or humans.
Yeah, the kindness turned out to be a form of medicine itself. Everybody's known that intuitively, but actually now scientifically, the being kind affects the epigenome, what's surrounding the DNA, and it can make the DNA produce molecules for the better. And it's one of the kind of four things I recommend. And human kindness is just incredible. I had two patients that I could not figure out how they stayed alive and got well. And then I read a book called The Rabbit Effect, and I'll leave the whole story behind it. But they had discovered that being kind on these laboratory rats would actually change their coronary arteries' ability to heal when they were trying to plug all these coronary arteries up on rabbits with junk food. And one particularly kind researcher would talk to the bunnies and stroke them. None of her bunnies had severe heart disease, and they couldn't
I know
believe
that
it.
study. Yes, yes. And how it's like
Incredible.
also like blood pressure goes down and they're
Yeah.
just less stressed and so on. So if it works for them, so much more for humans too, right? We just have to make sure that again, that is the approach of kindness. And I find like animals generally, if you think of dogs, they're naturally kind towards humans, right? They try to please their owners. And I saw an interesting program where there's a place where how we usually pick our dogs, but where the dogs actually pick their owners, which I find fascinating. And I think that should be the norm, where dogs have the option of like, do you want to go home with this person or do you want this person to be your caretaker?
I talk about that in my second book. I had a hardcore lawyer, never had a dog in his life, and he went to a shelter and they wanted to give him a really a great dog because he, was a lawyer. They thought he could take care of him. Well, he picked the homeliest looking dog there was. And later he told me that the dog had said, "I want to be your dog." And my name's Jack. And I said, "Eric, you're a lawyer. Are you telling me you communicated telepathically with this dog?" He goes, "Doesn't everybody?" I said, "No, Eric." So it's really true. I've seen similar videos where the people come and the dogs are turned out loose and they find their owner. And it's metaphysics, but it exists in my world, the way I see people and pets interact. It's a beautiful world.
In mine too. I believe there is something going on. There's something even spiritual, and especially with animals too. But I find also what I've noted, like when I watch people, when I watch the dog owners and the dogs, and I see there's a similarity between them. So I don't know if it's the owner influencing the dog or the other way around, but psychologically, sometimes even physically, their behavior, it's very similar in many cases.
Yeah, the dogs bring out the best in people. Being a veterinarian is like the world's funnest, greatest job. I mean, everybody is just happy with their pets. My dad was a lawyer. He goes, "Everybody brings us problems." He says, "You are so lucky. Everybody brings you cookies and cakes, and their dogs come in wagging their tail." And it's really true. It just is incredible what happens with both ends of the leash. I think the pets do so much good for us. In the morning, I see people out walking their dogs. They're happy. They're getting their exercise early in the morning, and it's just fun to watch and see the interactions.
Mhm. So part of your holistic care, what does it all include? And we talked about food and kindness. Is there anything else that you would add here for under this umbrella term of holistic care?
Yeah, certainly food is the main thing, and then there's always some supplements to add. You can't quite simulate what they used to eat. In the old days, for 20,000 years, they sat by the campfire and whatever people were eating is what they
Mhm.
ate.
Mhm.
And so we do add some fish oils, and there's some supplements that are whole food supplements that add the missing ingredients. There's so many good ones on the market now. And then vaccines, we do very conservatively. We try not to over vaccinate. That can affect the immune system, but just give what's appropriate. I belong to the American Holistic Association. I follow their guidelines. And then getting outside,
Mhm.
exercise, that's really great for both of them. Making sure there's no parasites that'll trigger autoimmune disease. And then keeping the teeth clean and healthy. That'll also trigger autoimmune disease if there's a lot of infection there. And then
That's
just,
a great
lots
point.
of
Yes.
TLC. Yeah,
Yeah.
TLC is the best one. Have give them lots of attention. Hopefully they're not locked up in an apartment for 14 hours. Just getting outside with their owners and meeting other dogs. And whether it's a dog, cat, or bird, the same thing happens for all species, in my humble opinion.
And this is the good thing about dogs too, specifically dogs, because you do have to take them for walks. So there's the element of exercise that's forced upon you because of your dog and through your dog as an owner.
Yeah, Yeah, I mentioned in one chapter there's a really famous, highly skilled, integrative medical doctor, Dr. Gurinari, and she had an older lady in her late 60s, severely depressed, blood pressure was in a mess, so many problems. And she wrote her a prescription to go adopt a dog from a shelter. The lady thought she was crazy. She wanted drugs. But anyway, she came back a month later, radiant, and gave Dr. Gurinari the biggest hug in the world and said,
Mhm.
"You changed my life."
Yeah.
And that's just magic when that happens.
And that's why they bring puppies during exam time, and so it really like decreases the stress and anxiety. So that's already there, even if you don't know the dog. But then if you get to live with them and have this relationship with them, it's so much more too.
Yeah, and Dr. Gurnari happened to have a very healthy poodle underneath her exam table. And she gave me the idea to write about people because I noticed her poodle's coat was so healthy. I said, "Are you feeding real food?" And she wasn't sure if she should admit it or not. I said, "No, no, that's a good thing. Your poodle looks great." So
Mhm.
she told me to come to her conference, which is all these integrative medical doctors who all got very ill. Unfortunately, their medical system failed them. They couldn't get well until they started eating, exercising, doing yoga, meditating, praying, and all those things that animals do naturally in many ways. Was really mind-boggling to me. So that's why I wrote Caring for Both Ends of the Leash after being at the conference and hearing all these medical doctors now are embracing diet, exercise, and things like that, which work great on animals.
Hmm. And so there are cases where they heal themselves, like dogs can overcome and beat cancer, and there are cases of that you've seen or that does happen.
Yeah, they're definitely meant to be self-healing. And the
Mm.
food can either push them in the wrong direction if it's unfortunately got toxins in it, like all the commercial foods, or it can push them in the right direction. I treat a lot of patients just with traditional Chinese veterinary medicine food therapy. And it's
Mhm.
been around about 3,000 years. I never heard of it in school. But, a lot of the colorful vegetables all have anti-cancer properties. Certain of the foods we often use just turkey burgers, fish. And so I've had plenty of dogs that, as a young vet, I either would have operated on or done euthanasia. And instead, they just stay healthy and happy, just food and supplements. And I don't know what happens in people too. I've read about it, but definitely you can push the DNA in the right direction or the wrong direction with all those things: food, exercise, loving care.
As a vet, I mean, would you say that something like intermittent fasting would work for animals too? Because for humans, it's proven, and I don't know if there's any research of if that can affect animals in a positive way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I do intermittent fast too, and
Right.
in the wild, the animals in Africa that I've seen, they hunt, they gorge, and they don't eat for quite a few days.
That's
So
right.
they're fasting for quite a while. There was a study done on rats back in the 30s. It was an incredible study, and they found that the lean rats who weren't fed much outlived the other rats by 33%, and they
Mm.
had 50% less disease. So fasting is definitely, great for animals. I have one or two patients that the family fast them every Sunday just to let them clean themselves out like people. So I'm a huge believer in it for certainly myself and people, and then for animals too. A lot of us are kind of lazy, and our pets only like to eat once a day anyway. So,
Mhm.
in a way, they're intermittent fasting. My dog eats twice a day. But
Okay.
he do fine once a day too, and they get a chance to heal when they're fasting.
Yes, absolutely. So it's the same mechanism that
Yes.
happens in our body. That's awesome. That's very interesting. And you've worked with exotic animals too. So I'd like to see what you have to say. I think we have like kangaroo parasites and stuff like that. What would you say? I'd be very curious to know more about that too.
Yeah, that was a research project. I was working for an Australian guy who was a veterinarian, a medical doctor, and he was doing a PhD on onchocerca, which is a parasite that causes river blindness.
Mhm.
And so I would collect roadkill kangaroos. Often they had babies that were alive, and my wife often had 8 babies hanging in pillowcases around the room. And so we were studying those parasites to see how we could help with river blindness in people.
Hmm.
And parasites are certainly a huge deal in animals. We make sure that they're free of parasites. Humans have a ton of parasites that go
Right.
undiagnosed, though. And
Hmm.
so it's really critical, like for those of us with autoimmune disease, to find out, do you have parasites underlying? I found I had quite a few, unfortunately, that I was unaware of when I found the right medical doctor.
Hmm.
So it's a big deal for both ends of the leash. A lot easier to see in pets, though, because they get quite ill with parasites. And
Hmm.
people certainly get much better care than most pets going to the doctor.
And so there's also like now more with like human and animal transmission. Is that really something that we should worry about? And what can we do about that too? Like avian flu and so on. What would you say as a vet too?
Yeah, well, that's a real worry for veterinarians. I was
Mhm.
exposed to a lot of stuff
Mhm.
in vet school. We got vaccinated for rabies. We were exposed once to a cow with rabies. I
Mhm.
worked with monkeys. There's certainly some viruses, and now with avian flu, there's been a couple vets who've got it. Toxoplasmosis, a lot of pregnant females are familiar with. They're told
Mhm. Yes.
um, not to change the cat litter.
Mhm.
And so certainly it's important. And I think having a great immune system is the best thing, though, that can fight off parasites. And so eating right, exercise, all those give you a great immune system, making sure the microbiome's healthy. Those are what I really stress is keeping a healthy microbiome. And hopefully that'll take care of the parasites on their own. But if they get symptoms, they're usually quite treatable. But certainly in people, I lived in the third world for quite a while and saw lots and lots of parasites there. And I did get treated, fortunately.
Mhm. But that's a great observation you have being healthy. I mean, that's in our hands in many ways, right? Where we can again have good food, exercise, make sure we're healthy, make sure we're not too stressed, and we deal with any kind of mental health issues that we have, so that we're stronger against those. Because I remember there was a lecture I saw with they did a swab of microbiomes of Subway, like a Subway pole in New York, and they found so many microbes, and they say half of them we don't even know what they are, right? But still, like our body, if we function in an optimal mode, we're protected against that, even if there's so much threat and danger out there. So the onus is really in many ways on us of making sure we are as healthy as we can be so we don't get sick in those ways.
Yeah, the physiology of animals and people is just incredible. It never ceases to amaze me. We're built to be self-repairing. We're just have incredible systems to put us in back to normal homeostasis. Again,
Mhm.
then we can wreck them though with the wrong food. And I was sleep deprived in college. I had a basketball scholarship and I was trying to study biology. I had no time to sleep. I'm up at midnight eating McDonald's. That's when I get hungry,
Okay.
just destroying my epigenome with
Mhm.
stupidity in hopes
Mhm.
of being a pro basketball player. So our choices are a huge thing. Right now, if I had to do it all over again, I would have slept 8 hours, eaten tons of veggies, gone to bed at 11, but probably would not have survived biology or basketball. But the choices are huge deal. Now, like you said, the I think things have changed. When I was in school back in the 70s, the genes were pretty much the controlling thing, and now it's probably 90% I've heard is our choices we make for our pets, which are usually really good choices. People take incredible care of their pets, way
That
better
is
than
true.
themselves. It's
Yes,
amazing.
yes, I noticed that. Yeah, in some ways, exactly, that's the case. Yeah, and that's quite amazing. So if we now can shift that again, look at both ends of the leash, and not just your pet, but also yourself.
Yeah, I tell some clients, you need to eat your dog's leftovers. They're eating better than you. They go, they are. And the kids go, they love their mother. Their mom loves the dog more than us. The mom goes, I do. Better behaved.
So why did you choose to become a vet? What led you to that? And again, specifically also maybe about this book. What drove you to write this book? You explained a little bit about that, but what would be the path? What would you say?
Yeah, so many failures, to be honest with you. Again, I wanted to be a pro basketball player, even though I was a 6'1" shrimp and I was
Mhm.
exhausted the whole time. And so then fortunately, my coach found me a team in Australia to play on, and that was fantastic. The ecology was different. And I had no interest in being indoors. I only wanted to be outdoors. So my sights were set on the ecology graduate group at UC Davis. And then I
Mhm.
ran into a wildlife vet in Australia. Then I ran into one in the jungles of Nepal who told me all about UC Davis veterinary medicine. I said, no, I don't want to be a vet. I want to be indoors. And he said he was a wildlife vet in Thailand. He was a French guy. He said, I don't want to work on pampered poodles and parrots, but I kind of ignored him. And anyway, when I went back to Davis, things were going pretty good. I enjoyed the schoolwork, but I had a little falling out with a major advisor who insulted my background, said I'd wasted my life playing basketball and should have gone to a decent. I was ready to punch the guy, but there was an unknown advisor I'd never met who was a vet. And he said, Doug, have you ever thought about vet school? Because I think you just lost your career in wildlife biology. So he took me to the vet school, and the vets were so kind and so nice. My brother's an orthopedic surgeon, and I kind of hang out with him. And when he was in his residency, God, they treat each other like dirt. But the veterinarians were just so nice and kind. I went to the zoo with him on the first day. I went over with Dr. Zinkel, was his name, and I got to flush the eye of a Asian elephant, which I had ridden on while I was in Nepal. That's how we track tigers. And something happened, a shiver went up my spine. I go, I'm going to be a wildlife zoological vet. And then, of course,
Awesome.
there weren't any jobs, so I ended up being a pet vet, which I absolutely became to love. I'd never seen such an incredible group of people in vet clinics who just love being around animals, healing, helping. And I joined them. I thought, I can't believe this, but the only way I cope is I surf for an hour every morning. I have to be outdoors. And once I'm outdoors for an hour in the ocean, then I'm okay to be indoors 10 to 12 hours. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't lived this. There's no way I would have thought when I was 25, I'd spend half my life indoors working with pets. And it's been an absolute joy and a blast.
A lot of people say being a vet is very stressful, and of course it is that part too. But is it like the other stuff that you do to find that balance? Again, whether it's surfing or yoga, that you just make sure that the stress doesn't affect you so much?
Yeah, we unfortunately have the highest rate of suicide
I've
among
heard that.
professionals. And we see so much death in a day, especially working with exotic animals. I do birds, rats, rabbits. They don't live long. They hide their signs of being ill because they're prey species. So they can be ill for 3 weeks and not show one sign. And then when they act sick, then that's when I see them and they often die in my hands. So it's hard losing patients. The families are attached to them. They're sad as can be. And that can really get on you after a while. In the morning, something happens in the brain, though, being in the ocean. We get dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, epinephrine, brain-derived neurotrophic factors. Surfers call it stoked. We're not the most
Yeah.
analytical bunch, but I didn't know what it meant. I just know I was so happy after surfing. And then when I kind of got into neurophysiology of the brain, I go, oh, we're making chemicals that make us happy. And so that's really allowed me to cope, just making sure every morning I'm in the water surfing. It's beautiful. We're there right at the beginning of daylight, which is gorgeous. So I usually show up for work pretty happy. And there are some days where you just feel off when you've lost patience. You thought, what could I have done different? And we work with three other veterinarians, so we always have someone to bounce things off. I feel so sorry for the vets who are solo because you don't have someone to look over your shoulder or just think a little more clearly. And overall, though, it's been the world's greatest job. I've never once considered doing myself in. I go, oh, there's waves to catch tomorrow and puppies to play with and things like that. So for me,
Every
it's been the
day,
world's
right?
greatest
Every
job.
day.
Yeah,
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 it's a form of play too, especially again if things go well, of course. But that's the amazing part. I can't imagine. Yeah.
that's what my kids say. All they do is go surf in the morning and play with puppies and kitties all day. And I go, you're not wrong. It's not a bad description of a pretty fun life.
And you've had pets of your own, but specifically I want to talk about parrots and the
Yeah,
story behind their parrots.
yeah. I met my wife over parrots in
Nice.
Australia. She had two sulfur-crested cockatoos, and I had a little galah. And somebody knew we were both from California and thought that we might have something in common with a parrot. So
Mhm.
I got introduced to them there. Australia is full of parrots of all sizes and shapes. I was just amazed and infatuated. So I got a little baby and hand raised him and he went to work every day with me. Drove on or stood on my steering wheel.
Well, that's so
And
cool.
I'm embarrassed to admit I killed them out of ignorance.
Oh.
I was told only feed sunflower seeds, don't feed anything else, by the guy I bought them from. So I did. And a year and a half, he had a runny nose. I thought, no big deal. My Australian roommates go, you better get him to a vet. He's going to die. I said, he's only had a runny nose for a day. They go, you don't know anything about parrots. And I go, you're right. So I took him to the vet, and the vet said, oh, gosh, I'm sorry to tell you, but when you only feed sunflower seeds, it creates a fatty liver, which is very similar to what we're seeing in children these days eating these soft drinks. And my bird died that night. Quigley was his name, and I was shattered. He was supposed to live 60 years. My wife, on the other hand, got better advice, and so her birds are probably close to 65, 70 now, old.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
one of them is still very much alive. We lost the other female. She had what's called an ectopic egg. The egg went in the wrong area. It was like appendix rupturing, and 1 minute she was there, and the next she was gone. But that brought us together. And they're fascinating to work with. They again they hide their signs of illness, so we often have to do blood tests. But often they're too ill, so we treat the symptoms. Usually, just trying to support the liver. That's the number one organ that's affected in birds. I used to hospitalize all of them,
Mhm.
tube feed them, do everything, and then It's in my book. I had a really sick cockatiel. I gave it no chance of surviving hardly, and told the gal, "We've got to hospitalize." She said, "I'm getting married on Saturday, and she will be with me at my wedding. It's like 5 days away." I'm going, "You have got to be kidding. You're going to drive all the way to Napa with the sickest cockatiel I've ever seen." Well, of course, women's intuition was right. On Saturday, the little cockatiel, Sydney, was on her shoulder, chirping and happy. And I thought, something happened on that ride that wasn't just medicine. And that's when I started thinking maybe there's something else. I stopped hospitalizing a lot of patients after that, realizing they get better TLC at home, even though our staff's wonderful. There's no substitute for mom and dad or the family taking care of them. I've learned so many lessons. They're all in the book, all the things I
That's
did
awesome.
wrong.
Yeah, it's a bit of memoir too, right? It's a memoir, your
Yeah.
experiences, your adventures as well that you've had across the
Confessional
world.
of all the things I did wrong. And,
Yeah.
now at age 72, I've got a few things that were right after all those years, which is why I wrote the book, trying to share what I learned that works and what doesn't work.
And but you taught your parents to dance?
Pardon
The
me?
disco? You taught your parents to dance,
Oh,
like disco dancing?
um, my wife, Nancy, she just loved the disco era. She's a great
Yeah.
dancer. So this is in the 76, I think, 77. So
Mhm.
Saturday Night Fevers, is the album she loved. And she'd put it on, and these parrots would just dance up and down. And for years, she'd just go look at them and say, "Let's dance." And they'd be dancing and prancing, just crack people up, crack me up. One of them hated me, bit me every chance he could. The male, he loved her so much, he was jealous of me. But they uh, they are incredible mimics. They're hysterical. They're cognizant, in my opinion. And those of us who have birds know that they're little pranksters. And I think people who actually have ravens or crows for pets, they've got all the traits of human, including
Right.
being murderous if need be, and thieves and all that, plus all the good ones. So yeah, birds are absolutely fascinating.
And,
I love looking on them.
and they love music. I remember I had a hamster who would love the Gremlins. When I play the Gremlins like soundtrack, you just be still. It's like, what is this? And really liked it.
That really affects them. We've been
Yeah.
told to play Mozart and
Mhm.
gentle music for healing, and stay away from acid rock in our treatment room. We have music going, but I tell them we got to keep it mellow. We want to help these pets heal, and they respond to it for sure.
Yeah, there's actually, I think, a compilation of songs for dog therapy, and it's like soothing music that you can find on places like Spotify. So I found that quite fascinating. That does
Okay,
exist.
that doesn't surprise me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Dark Howard. You're an author, a vet, of course, with a lot of experience, a surfer, and as well. And your book is again Healing Both Ends of the Leash. So it's a memoir. It's a bit of your adventures, mistakes that you've learned from, as well as wellness wisdom for us all, for again humans as well. This is not just for pet lovers, but anybody who wants to have better health. It's highly recommended too.
Yeah, I put it in the end as a list of things to do to keep people with autoimmune disease healthy, just things in general, keeping people healthy. Then there's a traditional Chinese veterinary medicine diet sheet where if your dog's got diarrhea, it tells you what foods to feed him. If it's got arthritis, cancer, works for people too. Same foods in most cases. Just a very simple guide, but that's probably the most important thing in the book is that little guideline.
Awesome.
But
Thank you so much for being here in
thank
Rash's
you.
World.
Well, thank you so much, Russ. It's just been a great pleasure and honor to speak with you. Thank you.